What if the future of investing wasn't just about algorithms, but the human insights guiding them? Daniel Nikic is quietly reshaping how investors understand opportunity. As the founder of Cohres, a boutique investment research firm, Daniel has advised venture capitalists, high net worth individuals, and founders navigating emerging tech sectors, particularly artificial intelligence, SaaS, and data driven businesses. But his superpower isn't just his sharp financial acumen, it's his ability to cut through the noise and offer clarity where others see chaos. Born in Canada with roots in Eastern Europe, Daniel's career spans global markets and he's analyzed over 15,000 companies. Before launching his own firm, he held key roles across financial and venture spaces where he learned the limits of automation and the irreplaceable value of judgment. He's building an ecosystem where insight, personalization, and transparency matter again. If you've ever wondered how to think clearly in a world drowning in data, or how to build trust in a field full of noise, this conversation will stay with you. And before we start this episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth, and the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Jane, a graduate who says, and I quote, "The Deep Wealth Mastery Program prevented me from making what would have been one of the biggest mistakes of my career. I almost signed on the dotted line with an unsolicited offer that I now realize would have shortchanged my hard work and my future had I accepted that offer. Deep Wealth Mastery has tilted the playing field to my advantage." Or how about Lynn? Wow, he gets right to the point, and I quote, "Deep Wealth Mastery is one of the best investments ever made because you'll get an ROI of 100 times that. Anyone who doesn't go through this will lose millions." And as you're listening to these testimonials, are you wondering if you have the time? Are you even thinking that you've got this covered? You have the advisors or people in your network? Well, I got to tell you, these myths, they're often behind the 90% failure rate for liquidity events. Think about it. You have one chance to get it right for your financial freedom. You really want to make it count. And when it comes to time, let's hear what William has to say. We just got in this testimonial. William says, and I quote, "I didn't have the time for Deep Wealth Mastery, but I made the time and I'm glad I did. What I learned goes far beyond any other executive program or coach I've experienced." So what do you think? As I hear that, that's exactly what gets me out of bed every day. That's my mission. That's the team's mission here at Deep Wealth, to literally change the social fabric of society, one business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. And my Deep Wealth Nation, what I want you to know, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it isn't theory. It's from the trenches. It's the only one based on a 9-figure deal. And that deal, that was my deal. You know my story. I said no to a 7-figure offer. I created the system that later on, myself and my business partners, we said yes to a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. That's what we now call the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, or the Scale for Ultimate Sales system. It's built by business owners for business owners. So if you're interested in growing your profits, for preparing for a future liquidity event, and that may be 2 years away, it could be 22 years away, whatever the time may be, you want to do this now, and you want to optimize your post-exit life. Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. To get started, email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. You'll receive all the information about the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, or better yet, why not hop on a complimentary strategy call? We'll go through exactly where your business is today and what's standing between you and your financial independence and your dreams. So that's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you. They're looking to grow their businesses, create market disruptions, and unlock their financial freedom to get what they deserve. And whether you've been in business for 3 years, 40 years, you're a startup, you're in manufacturing, you're in high tech, low tech, whatever the case may be, come on in and network with other business owners. It's a safe space. It's a confidential space with business owners, with businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. So again, the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. Deep Wealth Nation, I have a few questions for you before I introduce our very special guest. As a founder, entrepreneur, business owner, Are you frustrated with your journey? Do you have all these grandiose plans, but you're not quite getting there? And you're wondering, how am I going to go from here to over there? And over there is crossing that finish line with success, with hitting your goals out of the park. And if you said yes, I know you did because I've been there too many times myself as an entrepreneur. You're going to love this episode. We have a very special guest in the House of Deep Wealth, a thought leader, a fellow entrepreneur, an all round successful individual who's been there, done that. And the insights that you're going to hear and the system and the way of looking at the world that he's created is going to blow your mind. So that said, Daniel, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. Daniel, there's always a story behind the story. What's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Oh, hello, Jeffrey, and thanks for having me on your podcast. To begin my journey, I'll have to go back to Canada since I'm born and raised in Canada, and I've always been a curious human being. So, say if I hear about something going on in a certain country, I like to research it right away. For example, if something's going on in South Africa, I'll be like, okay, what's South Africa's population, details, what's going on? And I've always been curious, even sports. So, some people are like, let's just say I was thinking about fantasy sports when fantasy sports weren't as popular. And being that I grew up and got educated in Canada, I moved to Croatia in 2009. Going, I wanted to see how life was in Europe. When you're young, you're kind of always you're more willing to take risks, I would say. And I was 21, and I was like, oh, why not? Let's see how life is. And I ended up staying. And I've always worked in financial analysis and research. I had some internships in accounting, some tax analyst jobs. And when I was came to Croatia, I worked for a local consulting firm. Then I went into commercial real estate. And in commercial real estate, that's where I really enhanced my research skills. That being doing primary and secondary research. And for those who don't know, primary, you go on foot to actually do the work. And secondary is when someone else has done the research and you interpret the research. And initially, I got involved in commercial research. Then I started my own company called Cohres, which stands for Coherent Research. And that was focused on market research and financial analysis. In other words, an outsourced consultant to companies globally. And in 2016, I pivoted to focus on investment research, which is assisting funds, mostly venture capital funds and family offices, to invest in the right companies, providing from scouting to due diligence, and also working with startups to help them get prepared for a problem.
Absolutely love that story, Daniel. And so let's pare back some of what you're saying. There's so much there to unpack. And so, Daniel, my goodness, you've been in different parts of the globe, in different industries. When you look back, is there any one lesson that really stands out that stood the test of time for you that's made the difference for you?
You have to market yourself. You really have to be out there and be vulnerable. When I initially started my company, I went with the more colder approach of doing emails. And lately, the past few years, people need to know you before they want to do business with you. That's how you build trusting relationships in business. And they're interested in your story if you're going to sell them something. So that's one thing I would say. And another thing is you have to be focused on your vision. You have to have the grit. You can't expect to work a 9 to 5. Maybe some have been successful being entrepreneurs that way, but I think it's very difficult. It's rare.
Some great life lessons there that you're sharing with us. And so I'm wondering, when was it? Was it a specific moment early in your career, or was it a combination of things that made you realize investing is the way to go, but not just any kind of investment? I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to find those patterns that most people are missing. I'll identify those and then I'll help, like you said earlier, from private equity, venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, perhaps looking towards some kind of an exit of what they can do to help them. Was there a pivotal moment for you?
When I did research on family offices, and for those who don't know what family offices, those are usually high net worth individuals or trust funds that invest their monies and wealth into funds, VC funds, or they can have a law firm, accounting firm, a philanthropy, and etc. And when I was working with this, doing the research, it really opened my mind in terms of where the wealth is going. And I got more introduced in terms of the tech world. And I've done a lot of work in the AI space, but this really interested me because I was like, this is ever changing every day. And I believe anyone who's into research, it doesn't matter, it could be scientific, market research. You are curious and you always want to see what's next. And that really attracted me to dealing with the investment world.
And so, in terms of doing that, though, I know in preparing for today, before we would talk, You have quite the journey because it wasn't as though you just woke up one day and said, "Hey, I'm going to be doing this investment side and the strategy side." You had a lot of sacrifices along the way. Your path wasn't from A to B. There was a lot of, well, side steps over here and side steps over there, and it wasn't the easiest thing for you. Can you share with our community, Deep Wealth Nation, what some of that was like for you and some of the steps that you had to take to get to where you are today?
Sure. So I started my company out of my bedroom. And I was pretty much, you're working weekends, weekdays, you're working at least 12 hours a day.
Hmm.
And you're contacting people, individuals, trying to see who needs your information, your work. And it's very difficult to do sales. I know some people are like, oh, being doing sales is easy. It isn't. You have to show value to the other person that they should work with you. And we have to be considerate that there's over 7 billion people in the world. You have competition not only from America, from Canada, China, Azerbaijan, Australia, and etc. And it was tough getting those clients. You're doing business development, contacting probably thousands of people, cold email, telephone calls, getting shut down, and you have to be very persistent to be like, okay, this person doesn't know me personally. I have to keep on going. And I people get discouraged because they get rejected and they're like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. It's not personal if they don't know you. Indeed, and they don't know you. So I think that's one thing that really puts a barrier for a lot of people going into entrepreneurship because you're putting yourself out there. It is all on you. And that's one thing that's really tough. And it opens up your mind, but it also makes you very resilient.
And Daniel, speaking of resilient, growing up on different continents, you're in different cultures, and it might be a little bit of stereotyping, but generally speaking, I'm curious,
Yeah.
what did you notice? Are the stereotypes of what we hear out there, is there any truth to them in terms of what you saw in terms of, okay, I'm going to be here in North America. Now I'm going to be over here in Europe or the UK or Croatia or wherever your journeys took you. What did you notice as you went through the different societies, cultures, and customs?
I believe at the end of the day, the market doesn't care where you're from. And if you provide value or a service that they're interested in, they'll get it. I think if you're doing something similar to me, like consulting and stuff, in terms of market research and financial analysis, you really have to prove yourself because you're pretty much approaching them not face to face, but virtual. Hence, if it's email or LinkedIn or phone calling them, and just getting their 20 seconds is a lot. I think a lot of times you have to look at the education system. Say, for example, in Eastern Europe, or people could say emerging Europe, they're really heavily focused on mathematics and science. And we see a lot of that in the, let's just say, innovation coming out of these countries. I would say America is very good at sales and marketing and
Mhm.
innovation. We look at it today. Look at Coca-Cola, look at McDonald's. It's everywhere. Look at those big brands. It kind of connects to like the culture, or I would say the countries and what they're exporting. When you look at Japanese cars, they're known for being very sustainable and long term, right? So it's kind of interesting when we look at the patterns of how people look at what's quality and to sell in the market. But overall, people are people. I don't think it cares if someone's from, so if they want to do work with you, they will. And rarely do you see people that want to work with someone that they hate or dislike.
And so, with that in mind, I know you're working with what people would call success. So, high net worth individuals or private equity, venture capitalists, startups to help them get on the right track. So, from that perspective, you're helping them do some things that most simply aren't doing or they just aren't aware of from a very high level. And Daniel, the question I'm going to ask, you'd be completely right to say, well, Jeffrey, everyone's journey is different. Everyone's unique. It's not a boilerplate for every single person or company that we help. Generally speaking, though, is it the good old 80-20 rule, the Pareto's law, where 20% of the same actions or inactions are going to get 80% of the results we either want or don't want? Are there specific patterns that you're seeing?
It all depends on what someone's offering. Because some people you've seen with some companies, if I'm not mistaken, it was Clubhouse. And during the COVID era, it just started up and it was a huge during COVID time. So sometimes you have to create your own luck and you have to be in the right time in the right space. One thing I would say dealing with the law startups and I would say investors, they're always curious if the entrepreneur is passionate, can they deal with stress? And I don't think that's specified enough. I
Mhm.
would say every successful person, personal and business, they know how to manage stress. if you cannot manage stress, you won't be a successful entrepreneur, in my opinion. I think that's the number one thing. Can you manage stress? Can you deal with being vulnerable? Can you deal with rejection? And I would also say you have to be able to pivot because nothing's smooth. But that's my honest opinion. I think it all depends on a person's journey and what the service and product that they're offering. Because if you're dealing with health and healthcare,
Hmm.
it's a lot different because you have to deal with certain regulations. If you're dealing with social media, something as in personal product, it's a
Hmm.
lot different. So it
Hmm.
all depends on who you're dealing with and who you need to network with.
And so, from that perspective, and I hear what you're saying, Daniel. So, hey, where are you starting from? Where do you want to be? Where exactly are your goals today versus where you are right now and how you're going to get there? So, I hear you loud and clear on that. And so, let me ask you this. Most entrepreneurs, and let's just take a 50,000 foot in the air overview for most entrepreneurs with what they're doing, or perhaps even what they're not doing, if they could do one thing coming out of our fireside chat today, one low hanging fruit that could really move the dial, that could really make a difference for them, for their company, for the results that they want, what would that be for them?
This much, but not to BS, or in other words, try not to lie to people that you're selling. Because once you get caught as a liar, your reputation's done. It's very difficult to come back. And I think that's one thing that sometimes people in desperate situations, because it's easy to judge until you're in that situation. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. But if you're going to be successful and think, oh, I'll get to it once I get the monies and stuff, and we hear a lot of fraud stories,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think anyone starts to come and be like, I want to be a fraud. I think they usually have a vision and they try to push it, but they lie to investors and also to their customers and potential customers. Oh, it does this. So I would say don't lie because your reputation will get hurt immensely. And if you have employees, it impacts them greatly too. And I think that's one thing that some entrepreneurs take too much to heart, as I know, is if you have employees, they're dependent on you too to provide, and their families also. It's a domino effect.
It's interesting as you're talking about that. Hey, be straightforward, own it. And if something's gone wrong, say that it's gone wrong and perhaps what you're going to do about that. And I know in preparing for today, one of the things that I came across, Daniel, you said that companies don't have culture problems, they have leadership problems. And I love from that quote the clarity that you're actually putting on the actual situation because so often we use this corporate speak, corporate talk, a lot of words on the page, but it doesn't really mean anything or say anything. And you're going right back to the root cause. Hey, if there's a problem with the culture, more times than not, it's probably going to be because of the leadership of what they're doing or not doing. Can you walk us through that at Deep Wealth Nation in terms of us as leaders, as the founder of the business, as the entrepreneur, the business owner? What would you want us to know from a leadership side of things that can really make or break our company?
Well, I've had employees, I fired and hired employees, and based on my experience, I believe if the employees think that you have their best interests at heart and you're trying hard, not just treating them with disrespect, they'll have your back during tough times. And I think leaders, sometimes if it's a really big corporation, it's difficult, but for small companies, entrepreneurs and leaders, I would say, have to look at the point of view of their employees, what's
Mhm.
important to them. You can give an, I'll be very open, employee, oh, you'll get great new cell phones, great laptops for work and stuff. But if they cannot provide for their family or their lifestyle, let's just say just pay basic bills such as utilities, food, rent, and etc., they don't care about that. I think sometimes we get caught up that we don't understand what are the necessities for some employees. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it's better to be direct. And I've always tried to be direct with my past employees and current is that this is our situation, this is how it is.
Mhm.
And I have to respect you a lot more because it's not easy to be vulnerable, but in a respectful way and take accountability. And I think a lot of times, if my employees screw up, it's on me. I was the wrong that didn't train them properly or give them the proper direction or communication. And if I did all that, then I hired the wrong person. No one put a gun in my head to say, you have to hire this person. And I think sometimes it's difficult for leaders to take all this accountability blame, but that's the world you go into if you're going to be an entrepreneur.
And Daniel, oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we know our businesses really well. When it comes to what you're doing in terms of investments and finding the right strategy or the right path, that's a different world for us. And successful as we can be in the entrepreneurial world, when it comes to the investing world, oftentimes it's a very different story. So when it comes to investment, sometimes we'll use the same words, but they have different meanings. So for someone like yourself who's been there, done that, as the saying goes, when I say the word value, what would you define value to really mean in an investment context, something that goes beyond numbers?
Okay, that's a good question. So, say if you're a tech company, or say if you produce certain hardware or a product that's tangible. If you have a patent, that's sometimes worth a lot more than cash. Why? Because your competitors cannot build a similar product or exact copy without your permission or without giving you some royalties. And I know through a lot of investors, they look at if a company has a patent because they can use that to other investor or to get acquired by a big corporation. And I would say another big value for companies outside of the numbers would be experience. And I would also say network, but I mean proper network. Not network because you have a bunch of followers on social media or you know some people, but those who actually want to do business with you
Mhm.
because they trust your vision or they trust you can bring them some value, return on investment. It
Mhm.
could be like service to help their company grow or to help them with their daily lives and etc.
What's so fascinating about that, Daniel, as you're walking through that, I'm reflecting on my own entrepreneurial journey, as well as those in the Deep Wealth Nation, the Deep Wealth community. And you're talking about adding value, perhaps looking at a situation different than others would think about, but circling back and helping them get from where they are to where they want to be and just really making a difference. And for me, anyways, and you can share Jeffrey on base, off base, that's what being an entrepreneur or a founder really is all about. How can I take a very painful problem that's affecting a lot of people, figure out a way to solve that problem in a world class manner? I'm the best in the world at doing this. And over time, if I can help enough people solve that painful problem, get them what they want, eventually I can get what I want and become very successful with that. And so, with that said, I would love your thoughts on what I just shared and also to share with us what does success mean for you? Because you're in circles where success is taken to the next level and there's wealth and influencers and just changing things at a global level. What would you want us to know?
I think success is when you can look at your life and not wish to switch with someone else, personal and career wise. Because some people can be happy with living month to month because they get to spend more time with their loved ones or would prefer to have certain amount of money so they can provide for their families financially and future generations. They don't want the other lifestyle. So it all depends what someone wants for their life and if they're content, satisfied to not switch with someone. To me, that is success.
And if you take that now, and if I can get personal with you,
Yep.
looking at your life, how's that manifested in your life in terms of what success means for you and how you've been able to structure your life working with that?
Interesting. I've gone through a lot of failure in my life. And if you asked me 15 years ago, I would look at it as, oh my gosh, that's horrible, da da da. But I would say it would not make me the person I am today.
Hmm.
And I want to say like I'm myself too much, but I love the person who I am today. So
So,
I think overall that you just have to be happy with yourself or be proud of the person that you have become. Because I think if you're not proud of the person have become, or look or think of it this way, look at your younger self. And I know this has been said a lot of times, and be like, if the person who was 7 years old, 10 years old saw what I've become today, and I don't think anyone will be like, oh, I didn't do this. I didn't get 6 NBA championships like Michael Jordan. I think that is something important to look on to. Not what other people are doing, it's what you really think is successful or good.
yeah, and I'm wondering as you're sharing that with us. So, when you look at Cohres in terms of what you've started now and the difference that you're making, was that from a vision that you had in terms of what you can do out there? Was it coming from some of these failures that you've learned from? And hey, I want to take that and now that I've learned that I can help other people perhaps skip some of the speed bumps and have a smoother ride for them, where was that coming from?
Horace to me came from to the point that I was doing something that I'm passionate about. And I was lucky that it's finance and research. Some might think it's boring, but it's not to me. Got lucky in that department. And I would be a lot of time I had to pivot. If you ask me when I opened my company in 2014, did I expect it to be like this? No. I had a different vision for my company, but that's okay. That's the journey. That's the process. Because what I wanted 10 years ago is not what I want today.
Hmm.
So sometimes people say people don't change it. Yeah, they do sometimes in what they want in their career and life. Let's be realistic. If you don't change, then that can, in other words, not be good because you don't become a better version of yourself. Though overall, I see with Cohres, times are changing. I just look at much of an impact artificial intelligence has had. I know I have to innovate my company every day to deal with this ever-changing technology. That's just how it is. It's not like it was 5 years ago or never mind 10 years ago.
Love what you're sharing with us. And actually, as you mentioned, artificial intelligence, AI is one of the things that I wanted to ask you about because I know for you, AI, it's a big thing. And you said from what I was reading and researching before we talked today, and I agree with this, you said that AI should support decisions, not make them. And so, specifically when it comes to data driven investing, artificial intelligence, where we are today, where it's heading, what would you want us to know?
Great question. So I'll give a little bit background about myself. I did work for a startup before. I was at Cohres, and we were building a AI product. And people have to understand that products that are AI have been developed by humans, and there might be some bias, human bias. So we're still at the stage of augmented AI. So that means it still needs human interaction in order to function. And another question that I think some individuals do not know, AI has to be audited. So, for example, if it's going to be imagery AI, the AI tool has to be trained to understand what a certain picture is. If you're looking at autonomous vehicles, they have to know what 50 million different trees look like. So it's a lot of training. It's a lot of, I would say, data. And I know AI is going to take over a lot of the bot jobs are repetitive jobs that don't need too much insight. I think augmented AI is still good in some ways because if we let AI take it as its own, we don't know if it'll have human intuition and empathy. What
Hmm.
I mean by this, let's look at defense tech, drones and stuff. I'm not for wars or any wars. I don't think anyone deep down inside wants a war.
Hmm.
But if we're doing with this type of technology, they don't have the human empathy. When you meet someone and you hear their story, if they've gone through some pain, you have some empathy towards them. And the one thing AI does not have is experience. It just has data. There's a lot of interpersonal interaction that's very important to what we make as human decisions.
And so, from that perspective, Daniel, what I'm hearing you say is AI is great. Perhaps it can help you figure things out a lot quicker or give you some of the background information. But ultimately, when it comes to the final decision, at least where we are today, AI in and of itself, perhaps it'll be right sometimes, but more times than not, it may not be. That you've got to intervene, you've got to step in, put that human element into it to make the right decision.
It depends, yes, because if we're doing for dealing with healthcare, for example, it can look at all the data, but sometimes a doctor who has experience dealing with surgeries or dealt with 10,000 patients can use their personal experience to think this is a right treatment, not the one that's the AI is recommending.
Hmm.
That's where I think the human interaction is important. I wouldn't take AI as face value. I would take it as a great research source, develop your own insights. And I think that's one thing that should be specified a lot more. Insights should, in today's world, should be implemented by humans, not solely by AI. Because I've audited several AI data points, dealt with it, and AI does not always give the right answer.
Hmm.
You have to keep on training and give it reasoning. And yes, the AI models are being trained when you correct them and stuff in most cases. But still, it's just like when you get a contract, a legal contract. You don't sign it right away. You either get a lawyer to review or you review it yourself.
And so, from AI, perhaps I can give us some additional insights or different ways of thinking. When it comes to investing, I'm wondering right now, as we record this, there's some turbulence in the marketplace. It doesn't really matter what it is, you can fill in the blank. Today, it might be this, tomorrow, it might be something else. And so, I'm wondering, as someone who's coming up with strategies in the investment world, when there's some fear in the marketplace, markets are down, they're jittery, they're up, they're down, they're all over the place. It's not that rocket ship going straight up that we've had over the past while. How do we look at that and how do we respond?
Great question. I think sometimes we have to realize that the old saying is cash is king, and it will always will be king when dealing with businesses. And I think businesses that will most likely do be always successful are those that deal with necessities and that have a good operating margin and of course profit margin. And sometimes markets need to go through a recession or a cleanup because it's too unrealistic. Sometimes the bubble's too big, as they say. And a lot of times you hear that a lot of great innovation or start companies start up during tough times. Everything's going easy. You don't need to put as much effort. And obviously, I'm not saying it should be always like that because obviously we want people to be able to provide, to eat, and have good healthcare and et cetera. I think that's normal in my opinion. No one wants poverty. So overall, I would say that when dealing with markets going up and down, if you want to invest in a company, you have to think long term. I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just saying from my perspective, doing research. I'm not an expert in doing short investments, but long-term investments, you have to see if there's a growth market and if there's a continuous need for the next 5 to 10 years. Because as we see with some companies such as NVIDIA, we can even say with Apple, Microsoft, even several healthcare companies, a lot of them, they have a long-term plan, which ends up being more, I would say, shareholder or investor friendly than those that are just looking on a day-to-day basis or a short-term basis.
And Daniel, as you're talking about that, you're reminding me both in the entrepreneurial world, also in the investing world. I mean, ultimately, we're dealing with other people, and with people come emotions. And those emotions aren't always coherent, they're not always logical. You'll have things that are backed by simply false beliefs or fear or some kind of conviction that's completely off base. When you're in the markets, when you're helping entrepreneurs or private equity, and they're looking at investment strategies, how does emotion, the human condition, play into that? And what have you learned from your experience of seeing that and working within that?
Good question. I think a lot of time investors want to invest in a company where they somewhat respect or like the founder, or they like the story that they're saying. Everyone has their bias, but that's human nature. And it goes back to what I said earlier. No one wants to work with someone that they dislike. And first impression means a lot. If you're being rude, if you're being arrogant, very rarely would an investor want to invest in you unless they think you're the next Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, etc. But overall, I think that definitely takes a part in if they want to work with you and if they trust you. Do they think you're going to take their money and buy a Lamborghini, Ferrari, and spend it on stuff that doesn't relate to the company? Or are you going to be ethical and invest in the company properly to grow?
Some great insights there. And Daniel, as you're talking about that, you're also speaking to Deep Wealth Nation. And one of the reasons they're in the community in the first place, they're showing up. Perhaps some of them are going through our flagship mastery program, the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery, and they're learning, how can I grow my profits today? Behind the scenes, I'm preparing for a future liquidity event, whenever that may be. It might be 2 years away, it might be 22 years away. I'm going to show up a bigger, more profitable company, and arguably I'm going to have a much better exit than I would have otherwise from the preparation that I'm doing. As they're going through that process, given the circles that you're in, the kinds of deals that you get involved in, what do you want the entrepreneurs in Deep Wealth Nation to know that they should be factoring in to their company, whether it be on the growth side or the strategy or leadership or culture side of things? Because we talk about all of that in the master program. You're on the opposite side of the table, particularly when you're working with private equity, venture capital. What have you seen that perhaps most entrepreneurs just aren't aware of that would help them?
I think a lot of entrepreneurs have to take into account that if they're getting investment from outside of family and friends, those investors want a return on their investment. They're not looking for you to have this company for the next 20 years, unless it's going to be public and or acquired by someone else. So you have to make it as appealing as possible for someone to acquire your company. It could be via patents, it could be by high profit margins. And if your growth and at the scaling stage, you have to do proper marketing. I think marketing is leads to sales today. And I've learned that the hard way. In today's world, they are so bombarded by people contacting them to use their products or to invest in them. They will rather approach you in today's world or through a network if they're interested. That's my thoughts on that because overall, it is very difficult to grow a company, never mind have an exit, but you have to think of what's the exit strategy? What's your plan? And if it doesn't work, what's the backup plan? It might sound too, I would say, pessimistic, but you have to think that way. Nothing's guaranteed.
And what's interesting about that, Daniel, as you're sharing that with us, and thank you for those insights, it's a very visceral reminder. It's not just about the balance sheet or the profit and loss. It's about the narrative. What's the narrative about your company? I don't really care so much about what you did yesterday. Yes, that's important, even what you're doing today. As an investor, I want to know what the future holds because I can't buy yesterday. I can't buy the day before or even last year, but I can buy a future. I can buy tomorrow or next week or next year. So when it comes to narratives, entrepreneurs coming up in front of you, Daniel, some of your clients that you're working with in terms of what they should be looking at in terms of investing, what are some narratives in terms of characteristics that have you either walk away from the table, hey, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole, or have you lean into the table, yes, this is a company we want to be a part of?
Oh, good question. So I would say responsiveness. I don't think people realize it. The most busiest people that I've worked with, they're very responsive if you're doing business. And they might not be able to answer your call right, but they'll give you a heads up to be like, hey, I'm busy, I'll get back to you.
Mhm.
I think that's very important, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because you always have to respond to your employees, to potential customers and current customers. And accounting. So, in other words, are they playing with their numbers? Because I have a background in accounting. Therefore, I know if their journals or how they mark their expensive, if it's fraudulent or let's just say misleading, to be
Mhm.
polite. I think that's important because, yeah, you might have a good product and service, but if someone's investing in you, if they don't trust you with their money, they'll never trust you. And that's a big red flag, I would say, for investors.
A great reminder that currency, whether it's in M&A or even in the investment world, it's not money, it's trust. Thoughts about that?
I think it is trust. And I think that's in all human relationships. And that's one thing that AI does not have yet, going back to our previous topic. And you have to trust someone. Not you don't have to trust them fully, obviously, and respect. I think respect leads to trust.
Absolutely have that trust, have that respect. It has people give us the benefit of the doubt because things aren't perfect and things will go off the tracks. When you have that trust, when you have that respect, it can really make all the difference. And so, Daniel, before we go into wrap up mode, I know there are so many questions I haven't had a chance to ask you. Is there one question in particular that we haven't covered, or even a topic or a theme or a message that you want to share with the Deep Wealth Nation before we go into wrap up mode?
Yes, sure. So I've been dealing with the global markets, and obviously America has been the backbone for entrepreneurial ecosystem for, I would say, decades. But times have changed, and I see a lot of entrepreneurship being pushed in the Middle East, for example, in Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and also in Europe more and more. And I would say venture capital has definitely changed the way that the business world is operating. Why? Because there are more startups and entrepreneurs now, I think more than ever, because there's other ways to get a capital besides of just going to the bank or family friends as they did before. And that's a positive note. So that's one thing I would say that overall the startup world is changing entrepreneurial ecosystem because it's not just focused just based in this, I would say North America or Western Europe or UK, but it's global now. And we see that more and more. And I think it will be continuing going that way. And it could be that there won't be any more larger companies of thousands of employees. It could be just a few 50 with the enhancement of artificial intelligence in today's world.
It's interesting because as you talk about that, there are those in the AI circles that are saying the days of needing to have a team in the hundreds are probably, like you're saying, Daniel, probably behind us. Through AI, a single entrepreneur can launch a multi-million dollar company very quickly and effectively and have most of that go to the bottom line. So, to what you're saying of how AI is changing the landscape of entrepreneurship and challenging the traditional rules, we'll have to see where it all goes and what it looks like. All the signs seem to indicate, though, we're in for some massive changes. Thoughts about that?
Definitely. We're definitely gonna have massive changes. There's no more startups say if you're at the seed stage, which is usually having a few revenue or pre-revenue, that you need 10 employees or a 10 member team. There'll probably be three, four people, and at exit, they might be have 10 people. Times have changed. Yes, humans are somewhat being replaced by AI, but there should be more jobs coming through the AI. I wouldn't say will it be as much as they are now or before. I don't know. That's difficult to say. I can't predict the future, obviously, but I can give some insight of what I think could happen because I don't think anyone knows 100% what's going to happen in the future.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating story that continues to unfold, and we'll absolutely see where that goes. So, Daniel, that said, we're going to go into wrap up mode. It's a tradition here on the Deep Wealth podcast where it's my privilege and honor for every guest that I ask the same question. Let me set the question up for you. It's a fun one. So, when you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. Daniel, imagine now it's tomorrow morning. And this is the fun part. You look outside your window, not only is the DeLorean car curbside, the door is open, it's waiting for you to hop on in, which you do, and you're now going to go to any point in time. Perhaps it's Daniel as a young child or a teenager, whatever point in time it would be. What would you tell your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, Daniel, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
If I could say one thing to my younger self is focus on the long-term goal and avoid distractions because you might think that working on something for 1 year, 2 years is a long time. It isn't when you look at the long term of the stuff.
I love that. So focus on the long term, focus on the big picture, avoid the distractions. It's some great advice, especially today with all the social media platforms and the apps vying for our attention. It's something for all of us that we can likely do a better job with. And Daniel, let me ask you this. For someone in Deep Wealth Nation, they have a question for you. They want to speak with you or the team. Perhaps you can help them, their company, take it to the next level. Where would be the best place online to reach you?
No, thanks for the opportunity. I would say you can reach me at my personal website, danielnikic.com, where you can see my contact details, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm quite responsive.
Terrific. In Deep Wealth Nation, it doesn't get any easier. It's all in the show notes. It's a point and click. Well, Daniel, congratulations. It's official. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribes, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode, the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.